Hey guys, tonight, let's do something different. Let's step back, way back. Forget kings who drank themselves into early graves. Forget queens with 40 pet lapdogs. And forget royals who were basically walking medical experiments thanks to generations of cousin marriages. Tonight, we're talking about someone who looked at all that royal drama and just said, no thanks. Yeah, we're going to drift into the story of Prince Siddhartha, better known later as the Buddha. The man who somehow decided that having everything was actually the same as having nothing. Which, honestly, is not a thought you usually hear from princes. Most of them spent their lives adding more castles, more jewels, more mistresses. Siddhartha? He was like the one kid in the candy store who said, actually, I'm good. Can I just have some water? So dim your lights, sink into your pillows, and let's float into a kingdom of silk curtains, heavy gold ornaments, and very sheltered royal children. Because yes, like many royals, Siddhartha's childhood was basically one long helicopter parent situation. A prince in a bubble. So here's the setup. Siddhartha was born around the 5th or 6th century BCE in Lumbini, modern-day Nepal. His dad, King Suddhodana, was not exactly top-tier world ruler material, more like a regional chief, the kind of king who probably ruled over a cluster of villages, some farmland, and a whole lot of court politics. But in his own little corner, he was the guy, and he wanted his son to follow in his footsteps. Now, this king did what kings usually do when a baby was born. He called in the astrologers, the wise men, the early versions of fortune tellers. You know the type, the guys who peer at a newborn and confidently predict that he's destined either for greatness or doom. Because why not raise the pressure before the kid even learns to walk? The verdict came back. Siddhartha would either be a world-conquering king or a world-renouncing sage. Either he rules the world or he gives it all up and goes barefoot begging for rice. Which, to be fair, are two very different career paths. King Dad, obviously, was rooting for world-conquering king. Who wouldn't? Having your kid grow up to be a peaceful monk doesn't exactly secure the dynasty. So he did what many parents do when they don't like a possible outcome. He tried to control literally everything around his kid. The royal bubble life. So Siddhartha grew up inside a carefully crafted illusion. His father built 3 palaces for him, one for each season, because apparently just wear a sweater was not an option. These palaces were decked out with the finest luxuries. Music, dancers, servants, food, all the royal trimmings. And here's the key detail. Siddhartha was never allowed to see anything unpleasant. No sickness, no aging, no death, not even a wilting flower. The royal gardeners had to snip those the moment they started looking droopy. Basically, this was like growing up inside Instagram filters only, everything bright, happy, flawless, a curated reality. It sounds great in theory, but in practice, it's kind of like keeping someone in a padded cell decorated with glitter. It doesn't exactly prepare you for life. So, while other princes were being taught swordplay, diplomacy, and, let's be honest, probably how to drink too much wine without falling off a horse, Siddhartha was being kept soft, sheltered, cosset. But here's the funny twist. Even in this cushioned palace life, Siddhartha was thoughtful, calm. He wasn't your typical spoiled royal brat. No records of tantrums over toy chariots. No off-with-their-heads moments when the cook burned his dinner. Instead, he quietly went along with things, smiling politely, while in his mind, some deeper curiosity was brewing. The Palace Wife Project. Of course, there was also the matter of marriage. Royal children were basically political chess pieces. Siddhartha was no exception. His cousin, Yasodhara, was chosen as his bride. She was beautiful, smart, and apparently just as noble as expected. They got married when he was 16, which sounds young to us, but in the 5th century BCE, that was about the right age for royals to get hitched. Because, again, dynasties don't maintain themselves. Now, stories say they had a good relationship, which is refreshing, because half the royal couples we usually talk about couldn't stand the sight of each other. Siddhartha and Yasodhara actually seem to like one another, which makes what comes later in the story quietly tragic. But for now, palace life was golden. He had a wife, endless comforts, and the future of kingship ahead. The royal Instagram bubble was holding strong. The cracks in the bubble. And then came the reality check. Because no matter how hard you try to hide the world from someone, eventually the world gets in. Siddhartha, being curious, asked to go outside the palace. His father finally allowed it, but only after staging elaborate cleanup operations along the route. Picture this. The whole kingdom scrubbing itself like a teenager before a prom date, hiding anything remotely unpleasant. But life is messy, and things slip through. On his trips, Siddhartha saw an old man.
Wrinkled, bent, shuffling.
Siddhartha had literally never seen aging before. Imagine reaching your 20s and suddenly realizing, wait, people deteriorate? His driver had to explain, yes, my lord, this happens to everyone. Another trip, he saw a sick man, pale, weak, coughing. Again, total shock. Apparently, in Siddhartha's palace bubble, no one so much as sneezed. Another time, a corpse. Yes, he finally saw death. And at that point, the illusion cracked wide open. Suddenly, it wasn't all golden palaces and dancing girls. It was, everyone grows old, everyone gets sick, everyone dies, including me. Not exactly the bedtime story his father had wanted him to absorb. A wandering ascetic. A man who had renounced everything, dressed in rags, walking calmly with a begging bowl. And instead of being horrified, Siddhartha thought, that guy seems oddly at peace. The royal meltdown. Now, here's where Siddhartha really diverges from your average prince. Most royals who had midlife, or in his case, early life, crises dealt with it by building bigger palaces, hunting more elephants, or throwing week-long drinking parties. Siddhartha? He thought, maybe I should give all this up and just leave. And this is where the story really starts to turn. Because imagine you're born in luxury. You have 3 palaces, a beautiful wife, a newborn son, endless wealth. And instead of basking in it, you spend your nights staring at the ceiling, thinking, none of this solves suffering, none of this stops death, none of this matters. That's the exact opposite of every king we've ever covered. Usually, royals were like, quick, paint me another portrait to prove I'm immortal. Siddhartha? He quietly began plotting how to walk away. And that is where we'll pause for tonight's drift. Next time, we'll float into Siddhartha's great renunciation, the night he literally sneaks out of his palace like a guilty teenager, leaving behind his wife, his son, and his father's carefully curated dream. Because if European royals gave us dynasties of inbred rulers, Siddhartha gave us the dynasty of letting go.